You may have already heard about Constraint if you already know and use 3D softwares like Cinema 4D, for instance. So what my parent constraint does is exactly the same than in Cinema 4D, which is called Spring Constraint. So let me show you how it works. So I will create basically a new composition with an HD ready format with 5 seconds duration, which is okay. I will click on OK. Perfect. I will just create quickly a new solid. I will make it red, and I will make it a square format with 200 pixels on width and on height, just like this. So I will quickly make some move with some keyframes, basic keyframes on the position, like this, on the horizontal, like this, on the x-axis. I will go a little bit further in the time and will create another move on the y-axis, just like this. I want my motion to be rather fast, so I will leave it like this. As you can see, really basic motion. So let me show you what my parent constraint button does if you select only one layer, which is my case here. I just have the red solid one layer, which I could rename to be more concise square, for instance. Okay, I will click on it to select it and then click on the parent constraint. As you can see, my position has been overwritten with expressions without deleting my existing keyframes. And it has turned my square layer in a 3D layer, but you can, if you want, deactivate the 3D option, which is what I want just for now. As you can see, if you type EE on your keyboard, it has overwritten the position property, the scale property, and the rotation property. So let's preview what happens now in terms of motion. So I preview it, and as you can see, my motion is now much more springy and elastic, just like if you had used sorry for the bugs like you see that you see here. It's just due to the screencast application that runs at the same time. So as you can see, you end up with a springy motion, which you could have done exactly the same way that other cool scripts like ease and wheeze in elastic mode or Duik in spring mode would have done also. So as you can see, it's just exactly the same than these two free scripts that are already really powerful. So as you could guess, it's not really the main purpose of this tool since it's already existing. So to be precise, this button hasn't been designed to be used for only one layer. In fact, it's a constraint, so it has been designed to be used with 2 layers selected. So I will undo what I have done. So undo it like this, and now I have my basic motion from previously. I will now create a new other solid, which I will make smaller like this, and we make another solid color just like this, for instance. I will click on OK, and now I have another solid which I could So sorry, I will make it a bit more visible. Okay, I have a big red which has some keyframes on its position, and I have this little guy here which hasn't any motion of it on it. So I will rename it, for instance, the follower, like this. I could have renamed these layers, for instance, the master and the servant layer, or the parent and the child layer. You quickly understand what I say now, just after that. So the name really don't have any importance for the toolset to work properly, so it doesn't matter. So just for the purpose of the tutorial, I will leave it like I won't leave it square here. I will just rename it master. So my red one is the master and is keyframed, and the green one is the follower. The really important thing is to select first the layer that you want to have the springy motion, whatever you want to use, whichever it is, a deformer or a constraint. You always have to select the layer that is deformed or that is constrained first. So I will select the follower layer first, and then in a second click I will select the master layer in a second time. So I have both layers selected, and I will re-click on the parent constraint. Okay, let's do this. As you can see, the follower, when I type EE on my keyboard, has now some expressions on its position, scale, and rotation. Like before, it has turned my follower layer in a 3D layer, but I don't need so I click on the little cube to remake it a basic 2D layer. So I have now my 2D position, scale, and rotation overwritten by some expressions. And I have ended up with a new layer which is called, like the first layer that I have selected, which in my case is called follower. As you can see, the new layer here is called follower, and with a dash, separated by a dash, you have a spring constraint control in the name here. And as you can see, if I click on it and if I go in the FX control, you'll end up with some useful controls which I explain just after that. So if I make now a little preview, let's see what happens. Okay, pretty cool. As you can see, my master layer has its basic keyframed motion on the position, and the follower layer hasn't any keyframes on it. It automatically follows the master layer with a nice elastic delay, which is pretty nice, and which is exactly what the spring constraint does in Cinema 4D, for instance. As you can see, there weren't any parent hierarchy relation between the two layers, which is pretty convenient too in some cases. So let's complexify a little bit my motion. For instance, I will make now my square turn with a rotation. So I will click on it, make one full turn here with just basic keyframes like this, and as you can see, the green layer now follows also the rotations in a springy way, which is pretty cool too. And if I want to, I could even resize it in its scale too, so I will keyframe the scale as well. So I will click on the scale, keyframe it a bit like this. I will make it 25%, for instance, on both axes. And as you can see, the green layer will follow as well on its scale. So I will just complexify it a bit by doing this, for instance, 200%. And now, if I do another preview, here is what happens. As you can see, it continues to follow the master layer. It will resize in a springy way as well. Sorry for the slow preview. It's only due to the recording, so I hope it will be much more quick on your machine. So as you can see, it will springy follow the master layer, which is pretty nice on its position, on its rotation, and on its scale as well. Okay, I have the position, scale, and rotation keyframed on the master layer, and the follower automatically springy follows all the three properties in this nice secondary motion way. So it's pretty cool, pretty useful in a wide bunch of situations. As you can see, at the end of my motion, the green layer is a bit off in my composition. So I would want to reposition this green layer, whether like this here at this position. But as you can see, since the position of the follower is entirely based on an expression, you can't really reposition it manually like this. So to do so, you can offset the position, the scale, and the rotation by going not in the follower layer itself, but on the follower spring constraint control layer that has been created as well. It's invisible by default, so it helps you visualize it more quickly. It has a nice bluish label color like this, which reminds you of the color of the icons. And if you click on it, you'll find a pseudo effect called Springy Parent Control, which is really logical with since you have clicked on the parent constraint. So you'll find a springy parent control. I will talk about the spring control constraint control here, which is at the top, just after that. So don't worry, it's really important. I will talk about this later. So in order for me to offset the position, the scale, and the rotation of my follower layer, I will click on the follower spring constraint control and click on the springy parent control, find the offset PSR sub control, and I can now play with the position XY offset like this. And as you can see, you can now click on this little guy to offset the layer as you want. Okay, so you can position the X and Y independently. It will continue to springy follow your master layer, so you can redo a RAM preview like this, and it continues to follow with a springy motion your master layer. But as you can see, you can offset your position really easily. Same for the scale, sorry, and the rotation. As you can see, it's entirely based on expression, so I can't offset it manually doing this or this. I can't do it for the rotation neither, so I can do this by going in the follower Spring constraint control, in the Springy parent control, offset PSR, and I can now click on the scale X offset, for instance, to offset the X scale, the Y scale as well. If you have a 3D layer, which is possible by clicking on this little guy, you can offset the position on Z as well, and the scale on Z as well, if you want to. So here it's not that interesting for me, so I will zero all this. I can leave the scale as it was by make it 0 on the X and the Y axis. And as you could guess, you have the rotation that you can play with too. So the rotation for a 2D layer, is the Z rotation. Even if it's a 2D layer, you have to play with the rotation on the Z axis offset. So to help you offset the rotation on a 2D layer, you have to play with this setting here. As you can see, my green layer now turns normally with the value here. So pretty useful in some cases. So I will leave it as it is, and I will now show you a bunch of other interesting settings. So I've talked about offset PSR. You have the ability to tweak the properties to follow and to enable or disable the position, the scale, or the rotation. By default, the position, the scale, and the rotation are all enabled, which make the secondary motion springy follows when the position, the scale, and the rotation are keyframes. But if I, for instance, deactivate the follow scale, for instance, as you can see, now it will disable my expression. So it will take now my value that I have there. So I can now overwrite my expression by the scale here, which I can make at 100% on its X and its Y axis. So like before, it's exactly like before. So it follows the position, the rotation, but not the scale for now, since I've disabled the follow scale right here. If I re-click on it, it will now resize in a springy way like before. You can do it for the rotation as well. So at this moment, as you can see here, it follows with a springy delay the rotation of the master layer. So if you don't want so, you can disable the follow rotation checkbox. As you can see, now the rotation can be overwritten by the value you put here. So if I type 0 here, I have now my position that follows in a springy way, and when my wet square master layer turns like this, as you can see, the green follower layer won't turn anymore. And you can now keyframe, if you want to, your rotation manually like this, which can be really convenient in a lot of situations. So I will undo this. So I can re-enable the follow rotation, and of course I can disable the follow position like this. And now all I have to do is to move this little guy here, which is basically the offset position X on Y offset option here. So if I play with this option, I can now visually move my layer wherever I want. I can, if I want to, keyframe this property to animate this by hand and make it springy follow its rotation and its size, if of course the follow scale and follow rotation are enabled. So I will re-click on this follow position to make it all follow. Like before, I will re-offset my layer to make it more visible in my composition. And a last thing I want to show you in this Springy parent control is the keep at original position. By default, once you have clicked on the parent constraint, if you have selected two layers, it will maintain the position of your follower layer. So it will leave it in place if you leave it at 100% here. But if I reduce this value, look at what happens. Okay, it will now reduce the distance from the original position of your follower layer to the master layer. And if I make it 0, it will automatically place your follower layer at the exact same place as the master layer based on its anchor point, which is really nice in some situations too. So if I now make a quick preview, as you can see, it will follow my master layer in a much centered way. Okay, so pretty cool, pretty nice. Just to let you know, if you are sure to not use the scale and the rotation, for instance, and you just want to have the springy motion on the position, I strongly advise you to not only deselect the follow scale and follow rotation, since it will have the expression on its during all the composition, at which is a little bit slow in terms of computing. So if you are 100% sure that you won't ever use the scale and the rotation on a follower, you can simply alt-click on the chronometer like this, and it will simply remove the expressions on the non-desired properties. So it will play back in a much more how do you say this in English, in a much more quick way, and you have much more convenient feedback if you haven't too much properties with expressions on them. So now only the position is springy constrained to the master layer, which is much more wanted in some situations. So that's it for the springy parent control, and it's basically it for the parent constraint. And I want to show you another last thing. As you can see, you haven't seen that much controls about the springiness of the motion. All this is automatically computed by the expressions, but of course you have some controls to make it yours. So it's all about what my spring constraint control, which is at the top of the control layer here, what it does is exactly this. So the important thing to notice is that if you select 2 layers before clicking on the parent constraint, the first layer selected will be the one that will Springy follow, and the second one is the master layer that will have its keyframed motion on position or on its scale properties or on its rotation property. So the really important thing is to ensure that you have, and it's true for all the other buttons too, so keep that in mind, please. Don't miss this important step. Please ensure that the inherit motion from is on the correct layer. So it's always this layer from your composition that must have its keyframes on the position, on the scale, and or on the rotation. So since you have selected the layers in the correct order, it has already been set up for you correctly. But in some cases, if it doesn't work properly, please verify first that your inherit motion is correctly set up to the layer that has its keyframed motion. So a cool thing too is that you can enable or disable the properties that you don't want to make it spring. So if you use the position here like this, and if you uncheck the use position, for instance, like this, so I disable this effect, it will just now be a simple parent constraint, which is really nice if you don't want to use the classical hierarchy workflow, and you have now a simple parent constraint, which is convenient for many cases. If you leave the keep at original position at 100%, you can now make your layer at the position you want exactly, and you have a simple constraint like this, which is pretty cool in some cases. So it will follow your master layer, but you have just delete the springiness effect on it. So you can delete this springiness effect on the position if you disable this option, or on the scale as well, or in the rotation as well. So keep that in mind. It can be useful in many cases. So I will leave it like this. So now it will, if I make a quick preview, it will make spring my position. Okay, pretty cool. So PSR properties to use, it's just for the springiness. If you want to, if you are comfortable with expressions, you can use the resulting position of the follower layer. So if I make it visible, if I click here, and if I click on the spring constraint control, you will see this little guy here, which is basically the springy position that is here. So in this sub effect, you will retrieve all the properties on the position, on the scale, and on the rotation on each axis for 2D layers and 3D layers that are computed with the springiness, which would be really interesting if you want to develop your own effects based on this little guy here. So this one is the position. You can have the scale, as you can see, since I've sorry, I will undo this. I will delete it. I will now redo it from scratch. So I just have delete all my expressions and all the layers created by the script. So let's redo it quickly. So now I have my master layer, that is keyframe. I will select my follower layer first, then my master layer. I will re-click on the parent constraint, and now I have my motion, that is springy follow on its position, on its rotation, and on its size as well, as you can see right here. So pretty cool. If I re-click on my follower spring constraint control, you will retrieve, so it was what I said just before, all the properties here. So if I want to, I can retrieve the as you can see here, the springy scale on Y and on X axis, for instance. If you had a 3D layer, you could retrieve the Z axis as well. And if you have a rotation, you can, as you can see, have the springy rotation as well. So it could be useful in some cases. The last thing that I want to show you is for me, the main important part of this spring constraint control. It will help you to customize the springiness of the effect. So the spring physical attributes have 3 different settings. I will explain them, so to be a little more convenient for the feedback, I will just disable the 3D effect. I will disable the scale and the rotation entirely and just leave the position. I will click on the follower layer. I will keep at the original position at 0, so it will center my follower layer on the master layer, and now I have this cool motion centered on my master layer. So I will just leave the keyframes on the position. I will delete the scale and the rotation keyframes. I don't need them for the moment. So now I have a little secondary motion which is really simple, and which is this. And I will just show you how you can customize these 3 effects. So in the spring physical attributes inside the spring constraint control, you have the elasticity, the damping, and the time offset options. The elasticity will allows you to have more springiness or less springiness, to make it more stiff if you want to. So the more the value, the higher the value is, the more springy will be your motion. So by default it's set to 7, but if I make it 9, for instance, let's do another one preview and let's see what happens. As you can see, my motion is now much more springy, so it has more springiness on it, and it can be much more useful for a spring motion or liquid motion or this kind of effects. If you decrease this value, so keep in mind that the default value is 7, the maximum value is 10. So if you make it 10, let's see what happens. It's really springy, so it's the maximum value. And if you decrease this value, for instance, let's make it 5, you will have much less elasticity, so it will be much more like stiff objects, or so it could be really useful too if you have like 4 or 5 in the value. 0 isn't that interesting since you won't see the difference, but 4 or 5 value will end up with this cool delay motion without any springiness on it. So it could be nice for various situations. So I will remake it 7 for the purpose of the tutorial, and I will now talk about the damping option. The damping, as its name says, will allow you to make to have some drag on the on your effect. So the less the value is, the more quick will happen your springiness. So if I make 0, you haven't any damping at all, and your motion will start at the exact beginning of your keyframe motion from the master layer. But if I type, for instance, let's say 6, for instance, as you can see, I will redo a quick preview. The elasticity is now much more slow. It's much slower than before. So the higher the value in the damping, the slower will be your motion, your delay motion. Okay, so the most to be more precise, if I make the damping really small, it will make a much nervous and a more vibrant motion. But if I have a high value here, I have a much smooth and a much slow, a much smoother and a much slower motion. So if I make 8, for instance, let's preview it. As you can see, the delay is much more like a big easy ease and easy out motion. So you have to tweak elasticity and damping both at the same time to have the exact desired effect for your springiness. So by default, it's set to 7 on elasticity and 3 to damping, which is this cool, nice motion. Last thing, you can delay the secondary motion created on your follower layer. If you want, for instance, to not make the secondary motion start as soon as the master layer moves, you can delay it a bit with the time offset. So it's a bit like a cheating setting, so you can use it mainly to fix some bugs or to refix some motions that are a little bit off. So the time offset, if I make 0.5, for instance, as you can see, it will not make the effect of the springiness follow immediately. So it will end up, as you can see, the master layer move during half a second, and just after half a second, it will follow with a springy effect. So the springy will begin just at this point, which could be useful in some cases. But if you have this value in a positive value, it will end up in a kind of anticipation effect. So if I make a little value like 0.2 or 0.1, it could add a little anticipation on your movement, which is cool too. So let's see what happens. As you can see, with the time offset at 0.15, you have this really cool anticipation effect at the beginning of the motion, which is pretty nice. You have the ability to type 0 to 1. The maximum value is 1 here. So it will delay the effect exactly 1 second later. Let's see what happened with 1 second. Okay, and you have the ability to make it a negative value as well on the time offset. So if you do so, this is why I've just created my keyframes not at the 0 frame here on my master position. So as you can see, I have some rooms before the beginning of my master layer here. So if I make this time offset value negative, if I do, for instance, minus 0.20, for instance, as you can see, it will make my follower layer move before my master layer move itself. So it's pretty cool. You can have some really nice effects with it. So my follower layer is now moving before my master layer. But keep in mind that if you do so, the springiness will be a little bit affected. So be careful while using your time offset setting. So you can go to -1 at the minimum value, -1 to 1 for the maximum. So this is it for the basics of the effects that come with the Spring constraint control. So keep in mind that all that I've explained in the Spring constraint control is true also for all the other buttons. So I won't take that much time to explain it with the other buttons, and other functionalities will be way faster to explain to you. Another thing to keep in mind is that you have this layer that come with each buttons if you click on these buttons, but you have this name which corresponds to the name you had selected first. So the follower is the follower here. If I had renamed this layer servant layer, for instance, or child layer, for instance, it would have been called child spring constraint control or servant spring constraint control. Okay, hope it makes sense. It will help you to keep your compositions neatly organized for anyone that reuse your settings. So what it says too is that you are able to create more than one spring constraint control. So if I do another, for instance, another solid with blue color, for instance, like this, the royal blue solid 1, if I leave it as it is, if I click on this one and then on the master layer, it's always the first that will be affected by the script, and the master layer which will be the one to follow as a second click. I will click on the parent constraint. As you can see, now I have a newly created royal blue solid 1 spring constraint control that owns to the royal blue solid only. So all the expressions will be controlled by all these properties here. And if I click on keep original position, it will affect only the royal blue solid, while the follower green square here is entirely driven by the follower spring constraint control. Okay, hope it makes sense. So if I want to have more springiness on the blue one, for instance, I can increase the elasticity, decrease the damping, for instance, and have a little bit of let's say, anticipation with 0.1 time offset, for instance. So if I make a one preview here, as you can see, you have two different secondary motion from both different layers, which is really nice. Just keep in mind, it's the last advice I will give you with the parent constraint, to not overuse this toolset inside a same big composition with many layers. So as you can see, there were a lot of expressions, so it could slow down a little bit your project. So keep that in mind. Don't overuse all these effects driven by expressions in a big project with many layers. There is the last thing that I really want to talk about to finish explain the basics principles behind the tools. It's the fact that for each layer that you have selected before clicking on the one of these buttons, like the follower layer, for instance, or the royal blue solid one, for instance, you'll see that they have an effect, a pseudo effect, that is called springy deformers control. Be really careful with the spring constraint layer property from this pseudo effect, since it's really have to refer the exact spring constraint control layer from the same name layer. So as I choose the follower layer as the first selected layer before, the follower spring constraint control has been created. As you have seen, it handles all the controls that the expressions are calling in the follower layer. So if you have not the correct spring constraint control name listed here in this layer, or even worse, if you have this effect that is not existing, or if you unfortunately delete this pseudo effect, let me show you what happens. So I will make it. Now you can see that there were a lot of errors in the expressions. It's totally normal, since the position, the scale, and the rotation. So sorry, I've deleted it before. So here for the royal blue solid, the position, the scale, and the rotation are all based on expressions that refer all to the springy deformers control. So if you delete this pseudo effect, the expression won't work anymore. So really be careful with all this. So I really advise you to ensure that your pseudo effect called springy deformers control always exists. Do not remove these effects. You could, for instance, choose to base your spring constraint layer on another spring constraint layer. As you can see, I am on the follower, which is the green layer. So basically, it's logical for me to refer to the follower, the same name, spring constraint control. But if I refer to another spring constraint control, which this one, for instance, is the spring constraint control layer from the royal blue solid, I could make it, since the spring constraint control has some pseudo effects on it. It will always find the correct expressions, so it will work. But now the follower, the green one, will act exactly like the royal blue solid one, since the two layers are exactly based on the same spring constraint control layer. So it's a little bit difficult to understand, but I really hope that all that makes sense. So do not remove ever the Spring Deformer's control. There is a little guy here which is a bit hidden. It's the source layer size. Just keep in mind that in some cases it's needed by the expressions. You normally won't have to touch to it, but you could use it only for the twist deformer. We'll talk about this a little bit later when I will show you the twist deformer. So in many cases, you won't have to ever touch to the Springy deformer's control. So now that you have fully understood the basics behind the parent constraint, let's see a bunch of concrete cases. So I will begin with a really cool example with well-known plugin which is called Webelos. So if I choose the Webelos script, it's the old version here, which allows me to create what is called a hose, which is really cool to create some bendy arms, bendy legs for character animations. I will create a start and end hose. I will create it just by clicking this little guy. As you can see, I have a hose end, which is this one, and a hose start, which is this second one. What would be cool is to use this automatic bending hose to create some, for instance, antennas or some bending hose automatically with secondary motion created by my parent constraint. So for instance, I will create a solid with the same gray than the hose, like this. I will create circular mask like this. Okay, and let's say that this big sphere is the body of a character, and let's say that the start is the base of an antenna on a robot or on the head of our character, and let's place the end just like this, for instance. It's the end of my antenna. I can click on the options to make it a little bit more short, like this, and I will make the start controller, which is the base, which is just here, a child of the gray solid. My gray solid will now be my head. I can rename the gray solid the head of my character, and this is the one that I will basically animate. I will create a few keyframes on my head like this. I strongly advise you to make some short, really short and basic motions on the position. So do not slow your motion. So if you do so, the springiness won't be visible at all. So the faster the movement is, the more springy will be your motion. So I will create a simple motion like this, something maybe like this, so it will return to the center of my comp, and maybe I could do a little bit of motion from top to bottom like this, and maybe you could easy ease this thing, easy ease all your keyframes. So I have now some really basic motion like this. Okay, really not that interesting. And now look at what happens if I click on the end at the frame 0. So my end O's is here. It's the extremity of my antenna. And since this is the head that has the keyframes on the position property, I will select as a second click my head. It will be my master layer, and my end will springy follow this head, keeping its original position. So I will now click on parent constraint. And as you can see, the O's doesn't work properly by default. This is only due to the fact that by default, the parent constraint transforms each layer selected on a 3D layer. But let's disable the 3D option here. And now, as you can see, the issues has been fixed. So now let's play the animation. Okay, pretty cool. So how cool is this? Just with the click of one button, you have now a cool springy antenna on top of your character's head, which is pretty nice. So really sorry for the preview, which is really bad here. It's only due to the recording, so you won't have this problem at all. So really nice, really cool, and really useful in many cases. Due to the 3D option issue that you had before, which is this one, you could argue that turning this layer, this follower layer, as a 3D layer won't help at all and isn't helpful. But I will show you just right now a really cool other example where the 3D options are really needed. So to do so, I will create another composition. I will use the well-known Element 3D plugin, which any motion designer love. Okay, so this is basic solid. I will apply the Video Copilot Element plugin, just like this. It will open up a scene that is by default totally empty. I will create a basic scene setup with, for instance, a cube that I will leave on the group 1. I will create, for instance, a torus, and the torus will be on the group 2. So I could change the value of the color to make something more visible like this. So let's do it. So I have now a cube that is blue and a torus that is red. I will just reduce its size a little bit. Okay, perfect. And I will, so as you have seen, the torus is on the group 2 and the cube is on the group 1. I will click on OK to validate my scene, and I will create a basic camera like this. I will turn my angle of view. I will de-zoom a little bit like this, and I will I will rename my gray solid element 3D. I will create some null objects that corresponds each to the groups to help me transform the cube and the torus as separate 3D null objects inside After Effects without tweaking the options from Element. So to do so, it's really useful. You just have to go to each group the group 1 and the group 2, go to the group utilities, like this, go to the create group null and create. As you can see, a new null object has been created, which is called group 1 null. If I move this group 1 on the z-axis, as you can see, my cube move. Okay, which is pretty nice. I can move it exactly how I want with a basic null object. I can even turn with the rotation tool my object, just like this, which is pretty nice. Okay, I can even resize it like this, which is pretty cool too. So since I can now play with the transform properties of a 3D layer, I can use the parent constraint, which is pretty cool. So I will, before that, click on the group 2, create group null, and create. Like this, I have now a group null that I can rename torus, for instance. The group 1 will be renamed cube, since it's the group 1. So if I move the group 1, the cube null like this, the cube will follow. If I move now the torus null, you see that the torus now follows as well. So all I have to do now is basically to let's make it next to the cube, for instance. Okay, pretty nice. So all I have to do is to animate the cube. So you don't have to keyframe before clicking the parent constraint. Let me show you. You just have to decide which one will inherit from the motion of the other one. So in my case, I want my torus to springy follow my cube. So I will keyframe later my cube and my torus will follow. So I will select the torus first, since I want this one to springy follow, and I will select as a second click my cube null. So since both are selected in the correct order, I can now click on the parent constraint, and as you can see, if I keyframe now the position of my cube like this, let's try it. Okay, as you can see, even without touching the torus null, the null will then follow. So if I do this, as you can see, the torus follow with a nice springy move. So it's really, really powerful. So I will create a basic motion. Let's make it a little bit more further than before, like this. You can't replace manually the torus before, as I shown you before. You can't overwrite the expression, but you can, if you want, go to the torus spring control, constraint control here, and go to the offset PSR and play with the position of the Z offset, for instance, like this. So if I make a quick preview, I have this cool motion, which is pretty nice and pretty cool. So I can do it now for the scale and the rotation. I won't show you the scale, since you have now normally understood the concept behind all this, but I will show you only the rotation. This is why I've chosen a torus. I will, for instance, take the cube, make the the X rotation. I will keyframe the X rotation to make one full turn, and as you can see, it will automatically make my torus react in a springy way, which is pretty cool too. Okay, really cool, perfect. How cool is that? Imagine the possibilities with such a powerful plugin like Element 3D. You can create with just the parent constraint such complex rigs. Okay, cool. So this is it for the constraint, the parent constraint, sorry. So now that you have understood all the basics behind it, you can now see how all the deformers work. Don't worry, it has been really long to show you how the parent constraint work, but since you have now the basics, knowing and understanding how the deformers work will be much faster. So here we go.